Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, and right now, sitting in old jars, wallets, and forgotten piggy banks across America. There's a 1972 1-cent coin that collectors are desperately hunting for. A coin so rare, so valuable, that it recently sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $6.1 million. Yes, you heard that right, $6.1 million for what looks like an ordinary penny. And before we dive deep into the astonishing story of this incredible coin, I need you to do something. Stick around until the very end of this video, because after we explore this 1972 treasure, I'm going to reveal another coin from 1980 that's worth millions too. And trust me, the story behind that one will leave you absolutely speechless. So make sure you watch every second, because you might just discover you're already holding a fortune without even knowing it. Now, let me tell you exactly why this 1972 1-cent is worth more than most people's houses. The year 1972 was a fascinating time in American coinage history. The Vietnam War was still raging, Richard Nixon was president, and the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies to keep up with the country's commerce needs. In fact, the Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 2.9 billion pennies that year. The Denver Mint produced over 2.6 billion, and the San Francisco Mint created proof coins for collectors. But here's where things get absolutely insane among those billions and billions of ordinary pennies. A tiny handful were struck with an error so significant, so rare, that they've become some of the most sought-after coins in the entire world. The 1972 Doubled Die Obverse Penny is what numismatists call a major hub doubling error, and what that means is during the die-making process at the mint, something went catastrophically wrong. The hub, which is the master die used to create working dies, was impressed into the die more than once but at slightly different angles, creating a doubling effect on certain design elements of the coin. And when you look at this error under magnification, or even with the naked eye if you know what to look for, you can see dramatic doubling on the words liberty and I in God we trust. The date 1972 shows pronounced doubling, and even Lincoln's eyelid appears doubled. This isn't a minor error that you need a microscope to see. This is bold, obvious doubling that makes the coin instantly recognizable to anyone who knows about rare pennies. And that's exactly why collectors go absolutely crazy when one of these shows up for sale. Now you might be wondering, how does something like this happen at a professional mint facility? Well, the United States Mint has incredibly strict quality control procedures, but back in 1972, the die-making process was still done manually in many steps, and human error combined with mechanical limitations meant that occasionally, just occasionally, an error die would make it through inspection and into production. And once that error die started striking pennies, every single coin it produced carried that same dramatic doubling. But here's the thing: mint employees would eventually notice the error and pull that die out of service, which means only a limited number of these doubled die pennies ever made it into circulation, and that scarcity is exactly what drives the value through the roof. Estimates suggest that fewer than 30,000 1972 doubled die obverse pennies were ever created, and when you consider that billions of regular pennies were made that year, you start to understand just how rare this error truly is. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, except the haystack is the size of a mountain and the needle is worth $6 million. The first major auction record for a 1972 doubled die obverse penny happened in the early 2000s, when collectors started to truly appreciate the significance of this error, and one specimen in MS-67 condition, which means it was in nearly perfect mint state with almost no wear or imperfections, sold for over $90,000. Which was already an incredible price for a penny. But as the years went by and more collectors entered the market, and as people started to realize just how few of these coins existed in top condition, the prices kept climbing higher and higher. A specimen graded MS-68 sold for over $200,000. Then another in similar condition fetched $350,000 at a major auction, and the progression just kept going up. Then came the record-breaking sale that stunned the entire numismatic community. A 1972 Doubled Die Obverse Penny graded M68 plus red by PCGS, which is one of the top grading companies in the world, came up for auction, and the coin was absolutely pristine. It had full original red copper luster, meaning it hadn't toned or darkened with age. It had sharp strike details, and the doubling was bold and dramatic, making it the finest known example of this already rare error. And when the hammer finally fell at that auction, the winning bid was $6.1 million. Can you even imagine that? A penny, something that people throw into fountains or leave on the ground because they don't want to carry it, sold for more than $6 million. And that sale didn't just break records. It shattered them, sending shockwaves through the coin-collecting world and making headlines in mainstream news outlets around the globe. But here's what makes this story even more exciting for you watching right now. Not all 1972 double die pennies are worth $6 million, but even lower-grade examples are worth serious money. A specimen in AU condition, which means about uncirculated with just slight wear, can sell for $15,000 to $30,000. One in MS63 condition might fetch $50,000 to $75,000, and even a well-circulated example in VF or fine condition could be worth $5,000 to $10,000, which means if you find one of these coins in your pocket change, even if it's been spent and circulated for years, you've still found a fortune. The key is knowing what to look for, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to identify this coin so you don't accidentally spend a treasure. First, grab any 1972 pennies you can find. Check your change jar, your car cup holders, old wallets, anywhere pennies might be hiding. Then look at the obverse side, which is the side with Lincoln's portrait, and focus on the word Liberty above Lincoln's head. On a normal 1972 penny, the letters will be sharp and clear with no doubling, but on the Doubled Die Error, you'll see a clear shadow or second image of each letter slightly offset from the first. It's most dramatic on the letters LIBER, TY, and the effect is unmistakable once you know what you're looking for. Next, check the date 1972. On the error coin, you'll see doubling on all 4 digits, especially noticeable on the numbers 1, 9, and 2. And then look at the motto "In God We Trust" above the date, where you'll see similar doubling on every letter, creating that distinctive shadow effect that makes this error so famous. Another great diagnostic feature is Lincoln's eye. On the double die variety, you can actually see doubling on Lincoln's eyelid, which is just incredible when you think about the detail involved. Now, I know what some of you are thinking: couldn't this just be strike doubling or machine doubling, which are much more common and much less valuable? Great question. Strike doubling happens when a coin shifts slightly during the striking process and gets hit twice, creating a flattened, shelf-like doubling that's worth maybe a few dollars to the right collector. But true hub doubling like the 1972 Double Die Obverse shows rounded, raised doubling with clear separation between the original image and the doubled image, and the doubling appears on the same plane as the original design rather than being flat or shelf-like. Once you see a real 1972 doubled die in person or even in high-quality photos, you'll understand the difference immediately. Now let me tell you some amazing stories of people who actually found these coins in circulation. Because yes, it still happens even today. In 2018, a man in Texas was going through a box of pennies he'd collected over decades, just sorting through them out of boredom, and he noticed one 1972 penny looked different. The lettering seemed thicker, more pronounced, so he did some research online, compared his coin to photos of the famous double die, and realized he might have something special. He sent the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back confirmed as a genuine 1972 double die obverse in MS64 condition, he sold it at auction for $87,000. Another incredible find happened in 2020 when a young woman inherited her grandfather's coin collection And among hundreds of common pennies and nickels, there was a single 1972 penny in a cardboard flip with a handwritten note that said, "Looks funny." And when she had it examined by a professional numismatist, it turned out to be a 1972 doubled die in -58 Australian dollars condition, worth approximately $32,000. Her grandfather had found it in his pocket change back in the 1970s, recognized something was unusual about it, but never knew he was holding a small fortune. These stories happen more often than you'd think, because millions of Americans have old coin collections, jars full of pennies, or inherited boxes of coins they've never properly examined. And somewhere among all those ordinary coins could be hiding a 1972 Doubled Die Obverse worth tens of thousands or even millions of dollars. The 1972 Doubled Die Obverse has also become famous in pop culture, appearing in articles in major publications like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and Forbes, and it's been featured on numerous television shows about rare finds and hidden treasures, which has only increased public awareness and driven prices even higher as more people enter the market hoping to own one of these legendary coins. Professional coin dealers have told me that they receive dozens of calls every week from people who think they found a 1972 double die, and while most turn out to be common pennies or minor double dies that aren't the valuable variety, every once in a while, someone calls with the real deal, and those are the moments that make coin collecting so thrilling. The hunt for rare coins is like a treasure hunt that never ends, where the treasure is hidden in the most ordinary places. Your pocket, your couch cushions, that jar on your dresser, and the thrill of the hunt is matched only by the life-changing reward when you actually find what you're looking for. What makes the 1972 Double Die Obverse even more fascinating is that it represents a perfect storm of factors that create numismatic value. It's an error coin, which collectors love because errors are by definition rare. It's dramatic enough to be easily identified even by non-experts. It's from a year that produced billions of pennies so people actually have a chance of finding one. And it's been certified and authenticated by major grading services, which gives buyers confidence that they're getting a genuine article. Plus, the coin has an incredible story that appeals to everyone from serious numismatists to casual collectors who just love the idea that pocket change could be worth millions. The copper composition of the 1972 penny also adds to its appeal. These pennies were made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving them that beautiful reddish-brown color that darkens over time, and specimens that have retained their original red luster are especially prized because they're so visually stunning, catching the light and showing off every detail of the double design in a way that toned or darkened specimens simply can't match. Grading services like PCGS and NGC have created special designations for coins with full red color. They'll label a penny as RD for red, RB for red-brown, or BN for brown, and that color designation can make a massive difference in value, with red specimens often selling for double or triple what a brown specimen in the same numeric grade would fetch. Now, before I reveal the next coin that's also worth millions, let me remind you again. Keep watching because the story I'm about to share next will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about another penny from the 1980s that has an error so rare and a value so high that it rivals even this 1972 double die. So don't click away, don't get distracted, because you need to hear this. The legacy of the 1972 Doubled Die Obverse extends far beyond just its monetary value. It's inspired an entire generation of coin collectors. It's taught people to look more carefully at their pocket change. And it's proven that anyone, regardless of their background or expertise, can stumble upon a fortune if they just pay attention. Schools have used the 1972 double die as a teaching tool to get kids interested in history and economics, showing them that American coins are more than just currency. They're tiny pieces of art and history that tell the story of our nation, and when you hold a 1972 penny in your hand, whether it's a common one or a double die worth millions, You're holding a tangible connection to the year 1972, to the mint workers who struck that coin, to every person who's handled it over the past 5 decades. And that connection is powerful. Some collectors have even started specializing exclusively in Lincoln cent errors, building collections that showcase dozens or even hundreds of different error varieties from across the decades. And the 1972 Doubled Die Obverse is considered the crown jewel of any such collection, the ultimate prize that every error collector dreams of owning someday. The market for rare coins has never been stronger, with major auction houses reporting record sales year after year. And as more wealth is created globally and more collectors enter the market from countries like China, India, and the Middle East, the demand for iconic rare coins like the 1972 Doubled Die Obverse continues to surge, which means the $6.1 million record might not stand for long. In fact, some experts predict that the finest known example could eventually sell for $10 million or more as the coin's legend continues to grow. But you don't need to be a millionaire to participate in this hobby. You can start right now, today, by simply checking the pennies in your pocket, and who knows, you might just discover that you've been carrying around a $6 million coin all along. The story of the 1972 Doubled Die Obverse is ultimately a story about hope, about the possibility that magic and fortune can hide in the most ordinary places, and about the thrill of discovery that comes from paying attention to the world around you. And if you thought this coin was incredible, wait until you hear about the next one, because we're about to dive into another penny error that's worth $2 million and has a story that's just as amazing. Last 1981 cent. This is not gold, it's not silver, but it's worth far more than both. And when I tell you that a simple 1980 penny recently sold for $2 million, you might think I'm exaggerating, but I'm absolutely not. This is the real deal. A genuine Lincoln cent from 1980 that's worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetime. And the story behind this coin is so fascinating, so dramatic, that it proves once and for all that rare coins aren't just locked away in museums or private vaults. They're out there in circulation, in old collections, and possibly right in your hands at this very moment. The 1980 penny we're talking about isn't just any error, this is a wrong planchet error, which means it was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, and wrong planchet errors are among the rarest and most valuable errors in all of numismatics because they require a perfect storm of circumstances to occur. The wrong blank has to somehow end up in the penny press. It has to avoid detection by quality control. It has to successfully be struck without jamming the machinery, and it has to make it out of the mint and into circulation where a collector can eventually discover it. And the odds of all these things happening are astronomical. The specific 1980 penny that sold for $2 million was struck on a planchet intended for a quarter, which means it's the same size as a quarter, the same weight as a quarter, but it has the Lincoln penny design struck on it. And when you see one of these in person, it's absolutely stunning. Imagine holding a coin that's as big as a quarter but shows Abraham Lincoln and the Lincoln Memorial, and the contrast is so obvious, so incredible, that you immediately know you're looking at something special. But how does something like this even happen at a modern mint facility? Let me take you behind the scenes of the United States Mint in 1980 to explain exactly what went wrong, or rather, what went right for the lucky person who found this error. In 1980, the Philadelphia Mint was producing billions of coins across multiple denominations, with different production lines running simultaneously for pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters, and each denomination requires its own specific planchet, which is the blank disc of metal that gets struck by the dies to create the finished coin. Penny planchets are small, about 19 millimeters in diameter and made of copper-plated zinc after 1982, but still mostly copper in 1980, while quarter planchets are larger at 24.3 millimeters and made of a copper-nickel-clad composition. Now, in a perfect world, penny planchets would only go to the penny press and quarter planchets would only go to the quarter press, But in the real world of high-speed industrial production, mistakes happen. Sometimes a quarter planchet gets mixed in with a batch of penny planchets, or it falls into the hopper that feeds the penny press. And because the mint was producing coins so quickly in 1980, we're talking about millions of coins per day, quality control occasionally missed these anomalies, and a quarter planchet would go through the penny dies, getting struck with Lincoln's portrait on one side and the Lincoln Memorial on the other, creating a coin that shouldn't exist but does. The 1980 Lincoln cent struck on a quarter planchet is exceptionally rare because not only did the error have to occur in the first place, but the finished coin had to survive. It's larger and heavier than a normal penny, which means it would immediately stand out to anyone handling it, and most likely, the majority of these errors were caught either at the mint or by bank tellers or cashiers who noticed something was wrong and pulled them from circulation. So the fact that any survived at all is remarkable. The $2 million specimen that made headlines was graded MS-68 by a professional coin grading service, which means it was in nearly perfect condition with just the tiniest imperfections visible under magnification, and it had full original red copper luster, meaning it had been carefully preserved since 1980 and never circulated or handled roughly. In other words, it was the finest possible example of an already incredibly rare error. The auction where this coin sold for $2 million was one of the most anticipated numismatic events in recent memory, with collectors from around the world bidding either in person, by phone, or online. And the starting bid was already in the hundreds of thousands of dollars because everyone knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own what might be a unique error. As bidding progressed, the price climbed higher and higher, breaking through $1 million, then $1.5 million, and finally settling at $2 million when the hammer fell, and the winning bidder, whose identity remains private, now owns what is arguably the holy grail of modern Lincoln cent errors. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. There are other 1980 pennies struck on quarter planchets out there, in lower grades or with different eye appeal, and they're worth anywhere from $50,000 to several $100,000 depending on condition, which means if you find one of these errors even in circulated condition, you've still found a fortune worth more than most people's annual salary. The key to identifying a wrong planchet error like this is simple. You need to weigh your coins and measure them, because a 1980 penny struck on a quarter planchet will weigh approximately 5.7 grams instead of the normal 3.1 grams for a copper penny, and it will measure 24.3 millimeters in diameter instead of 19 millimeters. So if you have a penny that's noticeably larger and heavier than normal, you might have just found a life-changing error. Now, I want to share some amazing stories of people who found wrong planchet errors just like this one, because these discoveries prove that miracles do happen in the world of coin collecting. In 2015, a man in California was sorting through a bag of pennies he'd gotten from his bank to look for wheat pennies and other collectibles, and he noticed one penny seemed thicker and larger than the others. At first he thought it might be damaged or swollen from environmental exposure, but when he measured it and weighed it, he realized it was the same size and weight as a quarter, and after submitting it to NGC for authentication, it was confirmed as a 1980 Lincoln cent struck on a quarter. Planchet graded -55 Australian dollars, and he sold it privately for $125,000. Another incredible find happened in 2019 when an elderly woman brought a coffee can full of old pennies to a local coin shop, just hoping to get a few dollars for them, and the dealer started sorting through them out of courtesy, not expecting to find anything valuable. But then he came across a 1980 penny that was noticeably larger than the others. His hands literally shook as he examined it under magnification, confirmed it was struck on a quarter planchet, and offered the woman $50,000 on the spot, which she accepted, and he later sold it at auction for $98,000. These stories give me chills every time I hear them, because they remind us that rare coins are still out there waiting to be discovered. And the person who finds them is often just an ordinary person doing ordinary things like going through pocket change or sorting old coins, and that could be you. The 1980 Wrong Planchet Error has become legendary in the numismatic community, with dedicated error collectors creating want lists specifically for this coin, and major dealers offering rewards to anyone who can bring them a specimen, because the demand is so high and the supply is so limited that these coins almost never come to market. When one does appear for sale, it creates a feeding frenzy among collectors, with multiple bidders competing aggressively to own a piece of minting history, and that competition drives prices to astronomical levels like the $2 million sale I mentioned earlier. The 1980 Lincoln cent struck on a quarter planchet also represents something deeper about the appeal of error coins. These coins are mistakes. They're accidents that weren't supposed to happen, and yet they've become some of the most cherished and valuable items in numismatics, which tells us something profound about human nature. We're fascinated by the unexpected, by the rare, by things that break the rules and exist outside the normal order of things. There's also something incredibly democratic about wrong planchet errors. Unlike rare dates or low-mintage coins that were intentionally made scarce, these errors are completely random. They can happen at any time on any production line, and they can be found by anyone who's paying attention, which means you don't need to be wealthy or well-connected to find one. You just need to be observant, curious, and willing to examine your coins carefully. The $2,001,980 penny is also a testament to the importance of preservation and grading. Had that coin been circulated and worn down to VG or good condition, it might have sold for only $30,000 or $40,000, but because it was preserved in pristine mint state condition and professionally graded by PCGS, it achieved a price that broke records and made headlines. This teaches us an important lesson. If you find a rare coin, don't clean it, don't handle it excessively, and get it professionally graded and authenticated as soon as possible, because the difference between a self-assessed, nice-looking coin and a professionally graded EMS 68 can be millions of dollars. The market for error coins has exploded in recent years, with more collectors specializing in errors than ever before, and organizations like the Combined Organizations of Numismatic Error Collectors of America, CONECA, have helped educate the public about errors and created standardized terminology and classifications that make it easier to identify and value these special coins. In fact, CONECA maintains a database of known error types and populations, and according to their records, fewer than 10 specimens of the 1980 Lincoln cent struck on a quarter planchet are known to exist in all grades, which explains why the finest known example sold for $2 million. When you think about it, that's fewer examples than there are people in a small neighborhood, which means this error is rarer than many famous rare coins from the 1800s and early 1900s that sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The 1980 Wrong Planchet Error also serves as a reminder that modern coins can be just as valuable and collectible as classic rarities. Many people assume that to find valuable coins you need to look back to the 1800s or early 1900s, but the truth is that errors can occur at any time, and a coin from 1980 or even 2020 can be worth millions of dollars if it has the right combination of rarity, eye appeal, and collector demand. This is why I always encourage people to check all their coins, not just old ones, because you never know when you might stumble upon a modern error that's worth a fortune. The story of the 1980 penny struck on a quarter planchet is ultimately a story about possibility and hope. It proves that anyone, anywhere, at any time, can discover a rare coin worth millions of dollars just by paying attention to their pocket change. And in a world where financial security seems increasingly out of reach for many people, the idea that a $2 million treasure could be hiding in a jar of pennies is powerful and inspiring. This coin represents the American dream in its purest form, the belief that with a little luck and a lot of attention to detail, ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. And that's a message that resonates with coin collectors and non-collectors alike. The $2 million sale also highlights the incredible growth of the rare coin market, which has matured into a multi-billion-dollar industry with professional auction houses, grading services, dealers, and collectors around the world. And as wealth continues to be created and more people discover the joy of coin collecting, prices for the rarest and most desirable coins will continue to climb, which means today's record-breaking sale could be tomorrow's bargain. Some numismatic experts predict that the finest known 1980 penny struck on a quarter planchet could eventually sell for $5 million or more as the coin's legend grows and as more collectors compete for the limited supply of top-quality error coins. But you don't need millions of dollars to start collecting error coins. You can begin right now by simply examining the coins in your pocket, learning what to look for, and building knowledge about different error types. And who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover $1 million coin in your change. The legacy of the 1980 Wrong Planchet Error extends beyond just its monetary value. It's inspired countless people to start collecting coins. It's brought families together as parents and children search through pocket change looking for treasures. And it's reminded us all that the world is full of hidden wonders if we just take the time to look. Museums have even featured wrong planchet errors in special exhibits about minting mistakes, using them as teaching tools to help visitors understand how coins are made and what can go wrong during the production process. And these exhibits have introduced millions of people to the fascinating world of error coins, creating new generations of collectors who will carry on the hobby for decades to come. The 1980 Lincoln cent struck on a quarter planchet is more than just a coin. It's a phenomenon, a cultural touchstone that represents everything magical and exciting about numismatics. And its $2 million value is not just a price tag, but a symbol of the incredible potential hidden in everyday objects that most people overlook. This coin teaches us to slow down, to pay attention, to examine the ordinary things around us with extraordinary care. Because you never know when you might discover that what you thought was worthless is actually priceless. And as we close this incredible journey through two of the most valuable pennies ever minted, the 1972 Doubled Die Obverse worth $6.1 million and the 1980 Wrong Planchet Error worth $2 million. I want you to take away one central message. Your fortune might already be in your hands. Every penny you receive in change, every coin in your old collection, every piece of pocket change in your car or couch could potentially be worth thousands or even millions of dollars. And all it takes is knowledge, attention, and the courage to believe that miracles can happen. So the next time you get a handful of pennies as change, don't just toss them in a jar and forget about them. Examine them, measure them, weigh them, compare them to images of known errors, and if you find something unusual, get it authenticated by professionals, because that unusual coin could be your ticket to financial freedom. The world of rare coins is waiting for you, full of treasures and stories and life-changing discoveries. And I hope these stories have inspired you to start your journey today, because somewhere out there, in a pocket, in a jar, in an old collection, there's a rare coin with your name on it, just waiting to be discovered.